I heard my son Roger's voice drift through the screen door, saying words that made my blood run cold. Once she signs, we're millionaires. I was supposed to be napping in my bedroom upstairs, like I did every afternoon at 2 o'clock. Roger knew my routine better than anyone. He'd been living in my house for the past 6 months, ever since he told me his wife Kate was tired of apartment living and they needed to save money for Isaiah's college fund. I'd believed him because that's what mothers do. We believe our children even when the truth is sitting right in front of us wearing a cheap disguise. But that Tuesday afternoon, I couldn't sleep. My arthritis was acting up something fierce, so I'd come downstairs early to get some of that pain cream from the kitchen cabinet. That's when I heard them on the back porch, their voices floating through the screen like smoke signals warning of danger. "Babe, are you absolutely sure about this?" Kate's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "If she finds out before she signs—" "She won't," Roger cut her off. "I've been putting those pills in her morning coffee for 3 weeks now. Doc said they'd make her fuzzy, compliant. She barely remembers what day it is anymore." Before we continue, please tell us where you're watching from so we know how far our stories reach, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. My hand went to my chest. Pills? In my coffee? I thought about the past 3 weeks, how I'd been feeling foggy in the mornings, how I'd signed things Roger brought to me without really reading them. Birthday cards, he'd said. Just birthday cards for church members who were sick. I'd trusted him. "What about the lawyer?" Kate asked. "Clifton Hayes has been handling her affairs for 30 years. Won't he notice?" Roger laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. "I cut the phone line to his office last week, made it look like storm damage, and I've been intercepting her mail for 2 months. As far as Hayes knows, Mom's perfectly happy and doesn't need his services anymore. By the time he realizes something's wrong, we'll be in the Bahamas with her money." I pressed my back against the kitchen wall, my heart hammering so hard I thought they might hear it. This was my son, my firstborn. The boy I'd rocked through chicken pox and driven to basketball practice every morning at 5:30 for 4 years straight. The young man I'd helped put through college by working double shifts at the hospital. Coming home with feet so swollen I could barely walk. "When's the party?" Kate asked. "Saturday, 3 o'clock. I told everyone at church it's a surprise birthday celebration. Mom thinks it's just a family dinner. When I bring out the birthday card for her to sign, that's when it all becomes ours. The house, the bank accounts, the life insurance policies, everything." "What about Denise and Gerald? Won't they suspect something?" "They're both struggling with their own money problems. I've been feeding them stories about Mom's declining mental state for months. They'll be relieved someone's taking charge. Plus, I promised them each $50,000 after everything's settled. That'll keep them quiet." I felt tears burning my eyes, but I blinked them back. I'd cried enough in my 72 years. I'd cried when my husband Earl died 15 years ago, leaving me to raise our youngest son Gerald alone. I'd cried when the hospital laid me off after 35 years because they wanted younger nurses. I'd cried when my sister passed last year and no one came to the funeral except me and Mrs. Johnson from next door. But this called for something more than tears. I carefully backed away from the door and made my way upstairs, my mind racing faster than it had in months, maybe years. That fog Roger mentioned? I realized it was lifting now, like curtains being pulled back on a window I didn't know was covered. How many things had I signed in the past 3 weeks? How much damage had already been done? In my bedroom, I went to my closet and pulled out the old shoebox from the top shelf. Inside was my medical alert bracelet, the one Earl had insisted I get after his first heart attack. "Just in case," he'd said. "You never know when you might need help and can't get to a phone." I'd stopped wearing it after he died because it reminded me too much of loss. But Earl had been smart about more than just medical emergencies. He'd set it up with a special feature, a panic button that would alert not just emergency services, but also 3 people he trusted. One of them was Clifton Hayes. My hands shook as I put the bracelet on and pressed the small button 3 times in rapid succession. That was the code for urgent legal matter, not medical emergency. Earl had made sure I memorized it, though I never thought I'd actually use it. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to remember everything I'd signed in the past few weeks. There was a stack of papers Roger brought me last Tuesday morning. I'd been so foggy I could barely see straight, but I remembered his hand guiding mine, his voice soft and reassuring. "Just birthday cards, Mama. You know how much the sick folks at church appreciate your signature." Except we didn't sign birthday cards at our church. We prayed over them and delivered them in person. It was one of Pastor Washington's core beliefs. Personal connection matters. My phone, my cell phone that Roger didn't know I kept hidden in my nightstand drawer, buzzed softly. I pulled it out and saw a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Button received, en route, ETA 15 minutes. Do not alert anyone. CH." Clifton Hayes, thank God. I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly shoved the phone back in the drawer. Roger appeared in my doorway, his face arranged in the concerned expression I now recognized as a mask. "Mama, you're supposed to be resting. Why are you up?" "Just needed to use the bathroom, baby," I said, making my voice sound tired and confused. If he wanted to think I was foggy and compliant, I'd give him exactly what he expected. "What time is it?" "Almost 3 o'clock. Why don't you lie down? I'll bring you some coffee." "That's sweet of you, Roger. You're such a good son." The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but I saw his shoulders relax. He still thought he had me fooled. "I'll be right back, Mama. You just rest." As soon as he left, I moved quickly. I went to my dresser and pulled out the small voice recorder I'd used years ago when I was studying for my nursing recertification. It still had batteries. I turned it on and slipped it into my bra, the microphone facing out. If Roger was going to drug me and trick me into signing away my life, I was going to have proof. He returned 10 minutes later with coffee in my favorite mug, the one that said "World's Best Mom." The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so heartbreaking. "Here you go, Mama. I made it just how you like it. Extra cream, 2 sugars. I took the mug and pretended to sip, but I let most of it dribble back into the cup when he turned away. "Thank you, baby. You take such good care of me." "That's what sons are for," he said, and I watched him watch me, waiting to see the drugs take effect. "Mama, I was thinking, Saturday, let's have a nice family dinner. I'll invite Denise and Gerald and the grandkids. We can celebrate early." "Celebrate what?" "Your birthday's coming up in a few weeks. I thought we'd get a head start." My birthday was 7 months away. In November, not April. "That sounds lovely," I said, making my words slightly slurred. "Will there be cake?" "The biggest cake you've ever seen. Now, why don't you finish that coffee and take a nice long nap? I'll wake you up for dinner." I forced down a few more fake sips, then set the mug on my nightstand. "You're right. I am feeling tired." "That's good, Mama. You rest now." He left, pulling my door mostly closed behind him. I waited until I heard his footsteps descend the stairs. Then I dumped the rest of the coffee into the plant by my window. The poor fern would probably die, but better it than me. I lay down on my bed, fully clothed, my mind racing. What had Earl always told me? "Betty, you're stronger than you think. Don't ever let anyone make you believe you're helpless." 15 minutes passed, then 20. I heard a car door close outside and peeked through my curtains. A silver sedan was parked at the curb, but I didn't recognize it. A man in a business suit got out, but he didn't come to the door. Instead, he walked around to Mrs. Johnson's house next door. Smart. Clifton Hayes was being careful. I heard the doorbell ring downstairs and Roger's voice answering. A woman's voice responded, someone I didn't recognize. There was a brief conversation, then the door closed. My phone buzzed again. "In position next door. Recording device active. Continue normal behavior. Backup plan in motion." Backup plan? What backup plan? Before I could think too much about it, I heard Kate's voice from downstairs, raised in anger about something. Then Denise's voice joined in. My daughter was here? I looked at my clock. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. Denise worked until 6 at the insurance office downtown. Why was she here early? I got up carefully and opened my door a crack. The voices were clearer now, rising from the living room. Can't believe you do this to your own mother! That was definitely Denise. Do what? I'm taking care of her, Roger shot back. Where have you been? When's the last time you visited? Don't you dare put this on me. Leonard told me what you've been planning. He heard you on the phone last week talking about property transfers and power of attorney. You think I'm stupid? My heart swelled. Leonard, Denise's husband. He'd always been the quiet one, the one who noticed things. Apparently, he'd noticed this. Leonard doesn't know what he's talking about, Roger said, but his voice had that defensive edge I remembered from when he was a teenager caught in a lie. Then why don't we go wake up Mama and ask her about all those papers she's been signing? Denise challenged. Better yet, why don't we call Clifton Hayes and have him explain them to us? The phone lines are down, Kate interjected. Storm damage. Really? Because I called his office an hour ago and he answered on the first ring. The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it from upstairs. Then Roger's voice, low and dangerous. You need to leave, Denise. This is Mama's house, not yours. You leave. I live here. I take care of her. You just show up when you need something. I show up because I love her, not because I'm planning to rob her. Something crashed, glass breaking, and I heard Kate scream. That was enough. I didn't care what Clifton Hayes' plan was. My children were fighting in my living room, and one of them was trying to destroy me while the other was trying to save me. I walked to the top of the stairs, gripping the railing because my knees were shaking. What in God's name is going on down there? They all froze. Roger's face went pale. Denise had tears streaming down her cheeks. Kate looked like she wanted to bolt for the door. On the floor between them was my grandmother's crystal vase, shattered into 1,000 pieces. Mama, Roger started, his voice shifting into that careful, concerned tone. You should be resting. Let me help you back to bed. I'm 72 years old, not 7. Answer my question. Why is my daughter crying and my vase broken? There's been a misunderstanding, Kate said, finding her voice. Denise thought... I thought Roger was drugging you and stealing your money, Denise interrupted, her voice breaking. And I was right, wasn't I, Roger? Tell Mama what you've been doing. Roger's jaw clenched. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not my son, not the boy I raised. Someone else entirely. Someone who looked at me and saw dollar signs instead of the woman who gave him life. Tell her, Denise repeated. Tell her about the pills in her coffee. Tell her about the papers you've been having her sign. Tell her about Saturday's party that isn't really a birthday party. The doorbell rang, sharp and clear in the silence. We all turned to look at the front door like it might explode. Don't answer it, Roger said. But Denise was already moving, striding across the broken glass in her work heels like an avenging angel. She yanked open the door, and there stood Clifton Hayes in his perfect suit, his briefcase in one hand and his phone in the other. Good afternoon, he said, his voice calm and professional. I received an emergency alert from my client. I'm here to ensure Mrs. Betty Crawford's legal interests are being properly protected. Behind him I could see 2 police cars pulling up to the curb. Roger went even paler. What did you do? He asked, looking at me with betrayal in his eyes. The irony was almost funny. What you should have expected, I said, descending the stairs one step at a time, my voice getting stronger with each word. I protected myself. From you. Officer Jamal Wright stepped into my living room like he owned it, his hand resting on his belt in that casual way police officers have when they're assessing a situation. His partner, a younger woman whose nameplate read Officer Chen, no wait, I needed to remember her actual name from the badge, stayed by the door, her eyes moving between Roger and Denise like she was watching a tennis match. "Someone want to tell me what's going on here?" Officer Wright asked. Clifton Hayes moved past the officers with the confidence of a man who'd been practicing law for 40 years. "Officer, I'm Clifton Hayes, attorney for Mrs. Betty Crawford. I'm here because my client activated her emergency alert system, indicating she was in imminent danger. Based on what I've been recording for the past 30 minutes from the adjacent property, I believe we have a case of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and possibly drugging." Roger's face went from pale to red. "Recording? You can't do that. That's illegal." "Actually," Clifton said, pulling out his phone and tapping the screen, "in this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording. Mrs. Crawford consented when she pressed her alert button. The system automatically begins audio surveillance to protect elderly clients in danger. It's all very legal, I assure you." Kate grabbed Roger's arm. "Don't say anything. We need a lawyer." "I think you need more than a lawyer, son," I said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. My legs felt stronger than they had in weeks. Funny how anger can burn away fog. "You need to explain why you've been poisoning my morning coffee." Denise gasped. "Poisoning?" "Drugging," Clifton corrected. "I'll need samples of any food or beverage Mrs. Crawford has consumed in the past 24 hours. Officer, I'm formally requesting a wellness check and requesting that any medications in this house be secured as evidence." Roger's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Kate, though, went very still. Something about her expression changed, shifted, like she was calculating odds in her head. "This is ridiculous," Roger finally managed. "Mama's confused. She's been having memory problems. That's why I've been helping her with her paperwork, making sure her bills get paid." "Is that so?" Clifton pulled a folder from his briefcase. "Because according to the bank records I pulled this afternoon, with Mrs. Crawford's authorization, of course, there have been 17 unauthorized transfers from her accounts in the past 6 weeks, totaling just over $473,000. The money went into an account under your name, Roger, and your wife's." The room went silent, except for the ticking of my grandmother's clock on the mantel. $473,000. That was more than I'd saved in 50 years of working. "Where did you get that much money, Mama?" Denise asked softly. I looked at my daughter, saw the confusion and hurt in her eyes, and realized she didn't know. None of them knew. Earl and I had been so careful, so private about it. "Your father was a smart man," I said. "He invested well, very well. After he died, I just kept letting the money grow. I lived on my pension and Social Security. I didn't need more than that." "You've been sitting on $500,000 while I've been struggling to pay Tamika's school tuition?" Denise's voice cracked. "While Gerald nearly lost his house last year?" "Would you have wanted it?" I asked her directly. "If I'd told you I had money, would you have let me live my life in peace? Or would you have started circling like sharks, just like your brother did?" Denise flinched like I'd slapped her, but she didn't answer because we both knew the truth. Money changes people. Even good people. Officer Wright cleared his throat. "Mrs. Crawford, do you want to press charges against your son?" I looked at Roger, really looked at him. His face was twisted with anger and fear, and something else I couldn't quite name. When had he become this person? When had my sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them roses turned into a man who'd drug his own mother? "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges, against Roger and against Kate. They conspired to steal from me. They drugged me. They've been forging my signature for weeks." "Mama, please," Roger started, but Kate cut him off. "Roger, shut up." Her voice was sharp, commanding. "Don't say another word." Something about the way she said it made everyone turn to look at her. She wasn't panicking anymore. She was calm. Too calm. Like she'd been expecting this. "Ma'am," Officer Wright said to Kate, "I'm going to need you to come down to the station with your husband to answer some questions." Am I under arrest? Not yet, but... Then no, I'm not going anywhere. She turned to Roger. And neither are you. They don't have enough to arrest us yet. They have bank records and allegations, but Mama's been taking pills. Doctor prescribed them. For anxiety and memory problems. That's why she's confused. What doctor? Clifton demanded. Mrs. Crawford's primary care physician is Dr. Regina Campbell, and I spoke with her office an hour ago. She hasn't prescribed any new medications for Mrs. Crawford in over a year. Kate smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Dr. Philip Chen. He's a psychiatrist, specializes in elderly patients with dementia. My stomach dropped. I never saw any Dr. Chen. Yes, you did, Mama, Roger said, jumping on Kate's story like a drowning man grabbing a rope. Last month, remember? I took you to that appointment downtown. You were having trouble remembering things. That's a lie! Is it? Kate pulled out her phone. Because I have appointment confirmations, prescription records, even a video of Roger bringing you into the office. You were very confused that day, Betty. Kept asking where you were, why we'd brought you to see a doctor. I felt the room start to spin. Had there been a day like that? The past few weeks were such a blur. What if they'd actually drugged me enough to take me somewhere, make me do things I couldn't remember? She's lying, Denise said. I know my mother. She wouldn't forget going to a psychiatrist. Wouldn't she? Kate's voice was soft, almost pitying. Roger's been very worried about you, Betty. About your declining mental state. He's been documenting everything. The times you forgot to turn off the stove. The times you called him by his father's name. The times you signed papers without reading them because you couldn't quite focus on the words. That's because you were drugging her, Denise shouted. Or because she's 72 years old and experiencing cognitive decline, Kate countered. It's sad, but it's not uncommon. Roger was just trying to protect his mother's assets before she gave them away to a phone scammer or made some other terrible financial decision. Clifton's jaw tightened. This is quite a story you've constructed. Very detailed. Almost like you've done this before. Something flickered in Kate's eyes, so fast I almost missed it. Fear, maybe, or recognition that she'd said too much. I think, Clifton continued, that we should all take a trip down to the police station after all. Mrs. Crawford, you'll come with me. Officer Wright, I'm requesting a full investigation into this matter, including a toxicology screening for Mrs. Crawford and a thorough examination of all financial transactions. Now wait just a minute, Roger started, but the front door burst open and Gerald rushed in with Shanice right behind him. Mama! Gerald's voice boomed through the house. My youngest son had his father's build and his father's protective instinct. He took one look at the police officers, at Denise's tear-stained face, at Roger's guilty expression, and his hands curled into fists. What's going on? Leonard called me, said something about Roger stealing from Mama. Your brother has been drugging me and forging my signature to steal my money, I said plainly, because there was no point in dancing around it anymore. Gerald turned to Roger with murder in his eyes. You what? It's not like that, Roger said, backing up. Mama's confused. She's sick. I was just trying to help. Gerald lunged. It took both police officers and Clifton to hold him back, and even then, he nearly broke free. Shanice was screaming at Roger, calling him names I'd never heard her use before. Denise was crying. Kate was on her phone, probably calling a lawyer. And I just stood there in the middle of my living room watching my family tear itself apart. Enough! Officer Wright's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone calm down or you're all going to jail. Mrs. Crawford, pack a bag. You're coming with us to the station to give a statement, and then we're taking you somewhere safe. I'm not leaving my house, I said. Mama, you can't stay here, Gerald said, still breathing hard. Not with him. This is my house. I'm not the one who needs to leave. I turned to Officer Wright. Remove my son Roger and his wife Kate from my property. Immediately. Mama, you can't do this, Roger said. and now he was crying, real tears streaming down his face. "I'm your son. I made a mistake. Please, I'm sorry. I'll give the money back, all of it. Just don't do this." For a moment, just a moment, I felt my resolve waver. This was my child, my firstborn, the baby I'd nursed and raised and loved with everything I had. But then I thought about the pills in my coffee, the forged signatures, the way he'd looked at me like I was nothing but an obstacle to overcome. "You stopped being my son when you decided I was worth more to you dead than alive," I said quietly. Roger's face crumpled. Kate grabbed his arm and started pulling him toward the door, whispering urgently in his ear. Officer Wright followed them, making it clear they had no choice but to leave. When the door finally closed behind them, I felt my knees give out. Gerald and Denise caught me before I hit the floor, and we all ended up in a heap on the couch, holding each other and crying like we hadn't since Earl's funeral. "I'm so sorry, Mama," Denise kept saying. "I should have known. I should have paid more attention." "We both should have," Gerald added. "I knew something was off. Roger kept asking me weird questions about your finances, about whether you had a will. I thought he was just being responsible." "It's not your fault," I told them. "Neither of you. Your brother made his choices." Clifton sat down in Earl's old chair across from us. "Betty, I need to tell you something. Something I discovered this afternoon when I was pulling those bank records." My heart sank. "More bad news?" "Possibly. The money Roger stole. It's gone. Transferred again within hours of landing in his account. To an offshore account we can't trace. At least not easily. $473,000. Gone. Just like that." "Can we get it back?" Gerald asked. "Maybe, if we can prove fraud and track down where it went. But it's going to take time. Months, possibly years. And legal fees." Clifton looked at me carefully. "Betty, I need to ask you something. Do you have any other assets? Anything Roger didn't know about?" I thought about the conversation I'd overheard on the porch. Roger talking about the house, the bank accounts, the life insurance policies, everything. But there was one thing he didn't mention, one thing Earl had set up that was so secret, even I barely thought about it. "Earl had a trust," I said slowly. "An irrevocable trust. He set it up years ago, after his brother tried to borrow money for a business venture that turned out to be a gambling debt. Earl was paranoid about family coming after our money. The trust is in the Cayman Islands. I can't touch it without meeting with the trustee in person, and I'd need 3 forms of identification plus Earl's death certificate and a special code Earl gave me before he died." Clifton leaned forward. "How much is in the trust?" "Last time I checked, about $3.2 million. The room went silent. Denise and Gerald stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "$3 million?" Gerald finally whispered. "Mama, you've been living like this with $3 million sitting somewhere? Your father wanted it protected, for emergencies, for family, for when we really needed it. I honored his wishes." "Does Roger know about the trust?" Clifton asked. "No. No one did except Earl and me. Not even the lawyer who set it up originally. Earl insisted on using a firm in Miami that specializes in international estate planning. Everything was done through phone calls and couriers." "Good," Clifton said. "That's very good. Because if Roger is involved in something bigger, and I'm starting to think he is, we need to make sure that money stays protected." "What do you mean, something bigger?" Denise asked. Before Clifton could answer, my phone buzzed. The hidden phone in my pocket, the one Roger didn't know about. I pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Crawford, this is Special Agent Torres with the FBI. We need to talk about your daughter-in-law. She's not who you think she is. I'm outside in a blue sedan. Please come out alone." My hands started shaking. I showed the text to Clifton, who read it and went pale. "FBI?" Denise asked. Why would the FBI be interested in Kate? I don't know, I said. But I'm about to find out. Against everyone's protests, I walked out my front door and down the sidewalk to where a blue sedan was indeed parked. A woman in a dark suit got out, holding up a badge. Mrs. Crawford, I'm Special Agent Gabriela Torres. I apologize for the dramatic introduction, but time is critical. Your daughter-in-law, Kate, is not just a criminal. She's part of a federal investigation we've been running for 3 years. She married your son specifically to get close to you. To me? Why? Because you're not random, Mrs. Crawford. You're connected to something much bigger than you realize. Your late husband, Earl? He didn't just work at the factory. He was a federal witness in a major fraud case in the 1980s. The people he testified against went to prison, but their families never forgot. They've been tracking his assets for decades, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. I felt like the ground was tilting under my feet. Earl testified against criminals? White-collar criminals running a massive Ponzi scheme. He was their accountant before he realized what they were doing and went to the FBI. He helped put away 15 people. In exchange, the government helped him set up that trust fund you mentioned. They helped him disappear his assets so the criminals' families couldn't find them. Then how did Kate find me? Agent Torres's expression went grim. Because someone on the inside told her where to look. Someone with access to witness protection records. We've been trying to figure out who for 3 years. That's why we let Kate get close to you. She's our bait to catch a bigger fish. You used me as bait? My voice came out harder than I intended. Not intentionally. When we realized what was happening, we started watching. We've been monitoring your house, your phone calls, everything. We were going to move in before she could hurt you. Today just accelerated our timeline. So what happens now? Now we need you to do something that's going to seem crazy. We need you to pretend none of this happened. We need you to let Roger and Kate think they still have a chance at your money. Because in 2 days, they're meeting with the person who's been feeding them information. If we can catch that meeting, we can bring down the whole network. You want me to put myself in danger? We'll have agents everywhere. You'll never be alone. But yes, there's risk. I won't lie to you about that. I thought about Earl, about how he'd risked everything to do the right thing, about how he'd spent our whole marriage looking over his shoulder, protecting me, setting up safeguards I didn't even know about. He'd been brave. Could I be any less? What do I need to do? Agent Torres smiled. For starters, you need to invite Roger and Kate to that birthday party on Saturday. Tell them you forgive them. Tell them you want to make things right. Can you do that? I thought about Roger's face as he'd cried and apologized, about how easily he'd drugged me, about how Kate had manipulated every single person in that living room without breaking a sweat. I can do that, I said. I can do whatever you need. Good, because on Saturday, we're going to give Roger exactly what he wants. We're going to let him think he's won. And then we're going to show him what real justice looks like. I walked back into my house where my children and my lawyer were waiting anxiously. I looked at their worried faces and realized I couldn't tell them the truth. Not yet. If this was going to work, everyone had to believe the story. That was just a federal agent checking on me, I said calmly. Standard procedure in elder abuse cases, apparently. They want to make sure I'm safe. It wasn't exactly a lie, just not the whole truth. Denise hugged me tight. We're not leaving you alone, Mama. Gerald and I are staying here tonight. Tomorrow, we're getting you a new security system and new locks on all the doors. And I'm filing restraining orders against Roger and Kate first thing in the morning, Clifton added. I nodded, playing my part. But inside, my mind was racing. 2 days. I had 2 days to prepare for the performance of my life. 2 days to pretend I was a weak, confused old woman who could be manipulated and controlled. 2 days to become the bait in a trap that could finally bring justice not just for me, but for Earl's memory, and for every other victim these people had destroyed. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of sunshine that makes you believe in new beginnings, which felt wrong considering what I was about to do. I stood in my kitchen making coffee, real coffee this time, not Roger's poisoned version, and watched through the window as FBI agents disguised as telephone repair workers set up surveillance equipment on the utility pole across the street. Agent Torres had been true to her word. My house was surrounded by federal agents pretending to be neighbors, delivery drivers, and service workers. The woman jogging past my house for the third time in an hour was wearing running shoes that probably cost more than my monthly pension, which seemed like a strange choice for actual jogging. But what did I know about undercover work? The doorbell rang at 9 o'clock sharp. I took a deep breath, put on my confused old lady face, and opened the door. Roger stood on my porch looking like he hadn't slept in days. Kate was beside him, perfectly composed in a yellow sundress that made her look innocent and harmless. If I didn't know better, I'd have thought she was a sweet young woman genuinely concerned about her husband's family drama. "Mama," Roger said, his voice breaking on the word. "Thank you for agreeing to see us." I'd called him yesterday morning, just like Agent Torres instructed, told him I'd overreacted, that I was confused, that maybe I did need help managing my affairs. The relief in his voice had been palpable, which made what I was about to do feel slightly less terrible. "Come in, baby," I said, stepping aside. "I made coffee." Kate's eyes flickered to the coffee pot, and I saw her calculate whether I'd drink it. She didn't know I'd watched her watching Roger drug my morning coffee for weeks. She didn't know I'd learned every one of her tells. They sat on my couch, the same couch where we'd had the confrontation 3 days ago, the same couch where my grandmother's crystal vase had shattered. I'd swept up the pieces, but I could still see tiny sparkles of glass in the carpet fibers, like diamonds marking the spot where my family broke apart. "Mama, I'm so sorry," Roger started, and the tears were real. I could see that. My son was genuinely sorry. Sorry he'd been caught anyway. "I never meant for things to go this far. I was just worried about you, about your money being protected, and I made some terrible decisions." "We both did," Kate added softly. "Mrs. Foy, Crawford, Betty, I want you to know that I care about you. I care about this family. Everything Roger did, he did because he loves you." The lies came so easily to her. I wondered how many other families she'd destroyed with that sweet voice and those earnest eyes. "I know you do, baby," I said to Roger, ignoring Kate entirely. "I know you love me. That's why I've decided to forgive you." Roger's face lit up like Christmas morning. "You mean it?" "I mean it! You're my son. You made a mistake. We all make mistakes." I paused, let the moment breathe. "That's why I've decided to make things easier for everyone. I'm going to sign over power of attorney to you. I'm going to let you manage my finances. I trust you, Roger." Kate went very still. Too still. She knew something was wrong. I could see it in her eyes. But Roger was so relieved, so grateful that he didn't notice his wife's sudden tension. "Mama, that's wonderful. Thank you. I promise I'll do right by you this time. I'll make everything right." "I know you will, baby. That's why I've invited everyone over this afternoon. Your brother and sister, the grandchildren, some folks from church. Pastor Washington is coming. Even Clifton Hayes said he'd stop by to witness the paperwork. I want everyone to see that we're a family again, that we forgive each other and move forward together." "That's a beautiful idea," Roger said, tears streaming down his face now. "That's perfect, Mama." Kate's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. "Roger, maybe we should talk about this privately first. Make sure your mother understands what she's agreeing to." "She understands," Roger said quickly. "Don't you, Mama? You understand that I'll be able to make financial decisions for you, pay your bills, manage your investments?" "I understand, baby. That's what I want. I'm tired of worrying about money. I'm 72 years old. I want to spend whatever time I have left enjoying my family, not stressing about bank accounts and paperwork." It was exactly what they wanted to hear, and Roger bought every word. But Kate was looking at me with narrowed eyes, trying to figure out what game I was playing. She was smart. I'd give her that. Smarter than my son by a mile. The guests started arriving at 2:00. Denise came first with Leonard and Tamika, my granddaughter who'd grown so tall I barely recognized her. Gerald and Shanice brought little Keisha, who ran straight to me for a hug. Pastor Washington arrived with his wife, Sister Washington, and half the church choir. Mrs. Johnson from next door came with a sweet potato pie. Even Deacon Franklin Pierce showed up, which was unusual since he usually avoided family gatherings after his own daughter's drama last year. By 2:30, my little house was packed with people. The dining room table was loaded with food: fried chicken, collard greens, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, and 3 different kinds of pie. Someone had brought Earl's favorite gospel music, and it was playing softly in the background. If you didn't know better, you'd think this was just a normal family gathering. But I knew better. I could see Agent Torres through the window, dressed as a caterer and carrying a tray of drinks. I could see other agents scattered throughout the crowd, wearing hidden cameras and microphones. And I could see Roger, nervous and sweaty, checking his watch every few minutes. He was waiting for someone. The question was who. At 3:00 exactly, Clifton Hayes arrived with his briefcase. He made his way through the crowd to where I sat in Earl's old armchair, the place of honor in my living room. "Betty," he said formally, "I've brought the power of attorney documents you requested. Before we proceed, I need to ask you some questions to ensure you understand what you're signing." "Of course, Clifton. Ask away." He pulled out a stack of papers and began reading questions from a legal checklist. Did I understand what power of attorney meant? Yes. Did I understand that Roger would have the legal right to make financial decisions on my behalf? Yes. Did I understand that this was a voluntary decision? Yes. Was anyone forcing or coercing me? No. Each answer was a lie, and each lie was recorded by a dozen FBI devices hidden throughout my house. "All right then," Clifton said, pulling out a pen. "If you'll just sign here, here, and here, we can make this official." "Wait," Kate said suddenly, standing up. "Before she signs, I think we should all be clear about what's happening here. Mrs. Crawford is signing over control of significant assets to Roger. I think everyone in this room should know exactly how much money we're talking about." The room went quiet. Roger shot Kate a warning look, but she ignored him. "Betty," Kate continued, "tell everyone how much money you have. Tell them about the bank accounts Roger transferred money from. Tell them about the trust fund in the Cayman Islands." Gasps echoed through the room. Denise's hand flew to her mouth. Gerald stood up, his fists clenched. Pastor Washington looked between me and Kate with confusion written all over his face. "How do you know about the trust?" I asked quietly. Kate smiled, and there was nothing sweet about it anymore. "Because I've known everything about you for 3 years, Betty. I know about Earl's testimony. I know about the people he put in prison. I know about every dollar you've hidden away. That's why I married your pathetic son in the first place. To get to you." Roger stumbled backward like she'd physically struck him. "What?" "Oh, please," Kate said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You really thought I loved you? You're weak, stupid, and easy to manipulate. You were a means to an end, nothing more. A way to get close to the woman who's been hiding millions of dollars that rightfully belong to my family." "Your family?" Agent Torres stepped forward, dropping her caterer disguise. "You mean the criminal organization your grandfather ran before Earl Crawford helped put him in prison?" Kate's mask slipped for just a second, showing genuine surprise before she recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Special Agent Gabriela Torres, FBI. Kate Brennan, or should I say Katrina Morelli, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, wire fraud, identity theft, and about 15 other charges I'm going to enjoy reading to you. But first, I want to hear you explain to this room exactly why you've been running this elaborate con." Kate's face went hard. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one. But first, let's talk about the meeting you have scheduled for 4 o'clock this afternoon. The meeting with your contact who's been feeding you information from sealed federal witness records. The contact who should be arriving," Agent Torres checked her watch, "right about now." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Agent Torres nodded to 2 agents positioned by the door, and they opened it to reveal a man in his 60s, well-dressed and carrying a briefcase. "Vernon Brooks," Agent Torres said with satisfaction. "Bank manager of First National, access to sealed records through a contact at the federal courthouse, and secretly, the nephew of crime boss Vincent Morelli. Thank you for making this easy." Vernon Brooks' face went white. He tried to run, but agents were already on him, pushing him to the ground and cuffing his hands behind his back. The room erupted. People were shouting, crying, demanding explanations. Roger collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands, repeating, I didn't know, over and over. Kate was screaming about lawyers and false arrest, but her voice got quieter as agents led her out in handcuffs. Pastor Washington stepped forward, raising his hands for quiet. "Everyone, please. Let's all calm down and let these officers do their work." It took 15 minutes to clear out most of the guests, leaving only family, Pastor Washington, Clifton Hayes, and Agent Torres in my living room. Denise was holding Tamika, who looked terrified. Gerald had Keisha on his lap, covering her ears. Leonard and Shanice stood by the door like they were ready to run at any moment. "Mama," Denise said shakily, "did you know about this? The FBI? The trap?" "I knew," I admitted. "Agent Torres came to me 3 days ago, told me what Kate really was, asked me to help catch her and her accomplices." "You used yourself as bait?" Gerald's voice was incredulous. "Mama, you could have been killed." "I could have been killed by the pills Roger was feeding me too," I shot back. "At least this way, I had the FBI protecting me. At least this way, these people will go to prison and can't hurt anyone else." "What about Roger?" Denise asked quietly. "He's still your son. He's still my brother." We all turned to look at Roger, who hadn't moved from the couch. His face was buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. "Roger," Agent Torres said firmly, "you have a choice to make. You can go to prison with your wife for the crimes you committed, or you can cooperate with our investigation and testify against the Morelli organization. If you cooperate, we can work with the prosecutor on a reduced sentence." Roger looked up, his face destroyed. "I really didn't know, Mama. I swear to God. Kate told me. She said she knew about your money because she worked at a bank years ago and saw the records. She said we could take it and you'd never even know. She said you were too old to care, that you'd die soon anyway, and then the money would just go to the state. I believed her. I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry." Looking at my son, I saw the truth. He wasn't an evil mastermind. He was a weak, greedy man who'd been manipulated by someone smarter and more ruthless than he'd ever be. It didn't excuse what he'd done to me, but it explained it. "You'll do what Agent Torres says," I told him. "You'll cooperate. You'll testify. You'll take whatever punishment comes. And when you get out of prison, however many years that takes, maybe then we can talk about forgiveness." Roger nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, Mama, whatever you say." Agent Torres looked satisfied. "All right then. Roger Crawford, you're under arrest for elder abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. You'll be taken into custody but held separately from Kate Brennan while we work out your cooperation agreement." She nodded to 2 agents who helped Roger to his feet and led him out of my house. When they were gone, the room felt emptier and somehow larger at the same time. Pastor Washington cleared his throat. "Betty, I know this is a terrible time, but I have to say, the church community wants to help however we can. You've been a faithful member for 40 years. You've given so much to others. Now it's time for us to give back to you." "I appreciate that, Pastor, but I'm all right. The money Roger stole, Agent Torres says they can track most of it and get it returned to me, and I still have the trust fund Earl set up." "It's not about money," Sister Washington said gently. "It's about family. Your son betrayed you. That's a wound that money can't heal. But your church family is here for you. We're going to check on you every day. We're going to make sure you're eating properly and taking care of yourself. We're going to be the family you deserve." I felt tears burning my eyes for the first time since this whole thing started. Through everything, the anger, the fear, the betrayal, I hadn't cried. But this kindness, this unconditional love from people who owed me nothing, broke something loose inside me. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you all." The days that followed were a blur of FBI interviews, legal proceedings, and family counseling sessions that Denise insisted we all attend. Clifton Hayes worked tirelessly to untangle the financial mess Roger had created, tracking down every penny that had been stolen and filing paperwork to recover it. 3 months later, I found myself sitting in a federal courtroom, watching as Kate Brennan, Katrina Morelli, stood before Judge Alexandra Morrison for sentencing. The prosecutor had presented a devastating case. Kate wasn't just a con artist. She was part of a sophisticated criminal organization that had been targeting the families of federal witnesses for decades. They'd destroyed at least 37 families that the FBI could document, stealing everything from life savings to actual lives. 3 elderly people had died under mysterious circumstances, while Kate was caring for them. The defendant showed no remorse, the prosecutor said. She saw vulnerable elderly people as nothing more than obstacles to money she felt she was entitled to. She married into families, gained their trust, and then systematically destroyed them. She deserves the maximum sentence. Kate's lawyer argued for leniency, claiming she'd been coerced by her family, that she was a victim too. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Judge Morrison wasn't buying it. "Ms. Morelli," the judge said, "in my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty. You didn't just steal money. You stole peace of mind, family bonds, and in some cases, lives. You deserve no mercy because you showed none. I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Kate didn't react. She just stared straight ahead as the bailiff led her away in shackles. Vernon Brooks got 18 years. 3 other members of the Morelli organization got sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years. And Roger, my son, my firstborn, got 7 years with the possibility of parole after 5 for his cooperation in bringing down the entire network. 7 years. It seemed like forever and not nearly long enough at the same time. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Agent Torres stepped forward to give a statement, but I stopped her. "I'd like to say something," I announced. The reporters went quiet, cameras turning to focus on me. I took a deep breath and thought about Earl, about how brave he'd been all those years ago when he'd testified against criminals who threatened to kill him. If he could be brave, so could I. "My name is Betty Crawford, and I'm a survivor of elder abuse," I said clearly. "My own son drugged me and tried to steal my life savings. He was manipulated by a woman who married into my family specifically to destroy us. But today, justice was served. Today, those criminals went to prison. And today, I want to announce that I'm starting a foundation in my late husband Earl's name, the Earl Crawford Foundation for Elder Justice. We'll provide legal assistance, financial counseling, and support services for elderly people who've been victimized by their own families or by con artists. No one should have to go through what I went through alone. No one should be afraid to trust their own children. We're going to change that." The reporters erupted with questions. But I was done. I'd said what I needed to say. Denise and Gerald flanked me as we walked to Clifton's car, and I felt their hands on my shoulders, steady and supportive. "I'm proud of you, Mama," Denise said softly. "We both are," Gerald added. "Dad would be proud too." That night, I sat alone in my living room, truly alone for the first time in months. No FBI agents watching, no reporters calling, no lawyers needing signatures. Just me and my thoughts, and Earl's gospel music playing softly in the background. I thought about the trust fund in the Cayman Islands, still untouched and waiting. $3.2 million that criminals had tried to steal, that my own son had betrayed me for. All that money, and what good had it done me? Then I thought about the whistleblower reward the FBI had given me. $10 million for helping bring down the Morelli organization. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Money I'd earned by being brave when it would have been easier to just be a victim. I picked up my phone and called Clifton Hayes. "Betty? Everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Clifton. I want you to start the paperwork for the Earl Crawford Foundation. Not just a little foundation, a real one, with full-time staff and offices and the resources to actually help people. I'm putting $5 million into it to start." "Betty, that's incredibly generous, but are you sure? That's most of your FBI reward." "I'm sure. Earl died protecting other people from criminals. The least I can do is carry on his legacy. Besides, I've still got the trust fund and my pension. I'll be fine." "All right then. I'll start the paperwork first thing Monday morning." After I hung up, I walked to the mantel where Earl's picture sat beside our wedding photo. We'd been so young then, so full of hope and dreams. We hadn't known about the criminals he'd face, the danger we'd live with, the secrets we'd have to keep. But we'd gotten through it together. "I did it, Earl," I said to his picture. "I finished what you started. Those people who tried to hurt us, they're going to prison, and we're going to help make sure they can't hurt anyone else." The house creaked around me, settling into the night. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Mrs. Johnson's dog barking. A car drove past playing music too loud. Normal sounds from a normal neighborhood on a normal Saturday night. But nothing would ever be normal again, and that was all right. Normal was overrated. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought, braver than I believed, and capable of things I never imagined. I'd learned that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when blood fails you. It's Pastor Washington and Sister Washington checking on you every day. It's Mrs. Johnson bringing sweet potato pie. It's Denise and Gerald choosing to believe you when it would be easier not to. And I'd learned that justice, real justice, is worth fighting for. Even when it hurts. Even when it costs you everything you thought you had. Because at 72 years old, I'd discovered something precious. I had my dignity, my strength, and my truth. Those were things no one could steal, no matter how hard they tried. The foundation launched 6 months later with a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by Agent Torres, Judge Morrison, and over 300 members of my church community. In our first year, we helped 87 elderly people escape financial abuse. We reunited 19 grandparents with grandchildren they'd been illegally kept from. We put 12 more criminals in prison. Earl would have been proud. And me? I was finally at peace. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.